Tighten up, leaders. Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership, the show that drills into the foundations of what leadership is all about. I'm your producer and co-host, Haley Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duran.
Join us as we sit down with leaders from across the country to mine for nuggets of wisdom.
All right, everyone, welcome into the meeting room today, and we're going to be talking about leadership because this is the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. I am the host, Billy Duran, and I'm happy to welcome back into the meeting room today Haley Gibson, our producer and co-host. Haley, welcome back to the meeting room.
Great to be here, and we have a great guest with us today.
We do, and we actually this is a different, did you know that this is 1 year? So 1 year ago, we had our first recording in the studio, so this is kind of our anniversary session for us, and today we're going to do a little bit of a theme. Tomorrow being Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about, have a little special theme version, but I wanted to tell you something that happened to me this week. One of our emerging leaders just called me out of the blue and said, okay, what's your leadership nugget for the day? What's your wisdom nugget for the day? And I actually got stumped, in full transparency. But after I thought about it, I reached very quickly back to our last episode with Nicole, and she talked about, you know, sometimes you just have to start something. We want to get something going. We build it into this big thing. We can't get it off the ground. Her encouragement is just get started. So I thought that I would try to stump you on this with the same question. So looking back over our second season, what's been your wisdom nugget takeaway so far?
Never stop looking for opportunities to learn. I think that all of our guests throughout this season, they've kind of hit on this theme of even if you hit a roadblock or even if your team hits a roadblock, you always have to keep moving forward. And that happens in leadership too. If you have a roadblock in the way that you're leading or your team or whatever it may be, if you're hitting these challenges, you know, just continue to keep going.
I remember back when David Dockstead was on our podcast back in season 1, we talked about emerging leaders, and he stopped us in our tracks and said, aren't we all emerging leaders? So we're all still on the journey. Well, today's going to be a themed episode. Since tomorrow being Thanksgiving, I thought it'd kind of be neat for us to discuss, you know, what does leading look like from a thankful or grateful heart? So we invited one of my good friends, Grant Morring, today. Grant's one of the leaders in construction space. He's the founder and president of BCM Morring. So, Grant, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
So, BCM was founded in 2009, naming it in honor of his children and wife. So, BCM stands for Bailey, Christian, and Michelle. It's grown from a home office now to a staff of over 50 employees, including some house master craftsmen and project management team. Is that a training program that you've built, Grant?
We think that in any business, we're all in training continuously. As an owner and CEO, I am continually emerging, like Haley said and you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point for us, for all of us, even as we listen to the leadership podcast. Haley makes a good point that we all are emerging. And when we stop learning or when we think we've arrived, evidence that we have not. So BCM Morring is a Christian-owned company that believes our actions should reflect our beliefs. Grant says that when it comes to charitable work, we're simply trying to use whatever skills and gifts God has provided to help us in any way possible. So Grant, just tell us a little bit about BCM Morring, about your leadership journey, so we'll just jump off there and we'll pick up and go.
Billy said BCM stands for Bailey, Christian, and Michelle. It's my family. 2008, received salvation through Christ, and Great Recession. Very long story, I'll make it short. Was introduced to Jesus, realized he'd been with me the entire time until I woke up, and realized I'm on the road to Emmaus while he's walking with me. I just never recognized him. In saying that, I have to get that part out of the way. My faith was a very integral part of the business in its inception. My family obviously is the most integral part of my life and all of our lives, as we have family, from spouses to kids to extended family. So the importance of recognizing my family as part of my triumph and recognizing them, and we're talking about gratitude today. I'm highly grateful for a wife that is so giving, has so much fruit, continues to pour into others, and she is kind of an inspiration for me. And, I, like hopefully other successful leaders, derive my strength, my thankfulness, and my greatness, I'll say, which is very small, by following other people that are better than myself.
Well, when you look at your leadership journey as emerging leaders, as we kind of all are emerging leaders at different stages of our leadership journey, when did you think about, hey, you know what, I'm good at this. Maybe instead of just doing this as a trade, I'm going to form this business. How did you come to that place? I mean, starting a business is a big deal. How did you come to that place?
It took 30 years to get to that place. I think probably deep down I always wanted that, and that's what I aspired for. The thing we won't talk about is vision. Aspiration is different from vision, right? So I aspired and dreamed, and but without a vision, it's nothing, right? There's no fruit. So great recession of '08 for me, the only recession I've ever been through, devastating financially for our family, a lot of hardships and things like that occur, in our household. And I hit the road and traveled and, doing the same type of work, construction, managed projects all over the country. I remember working 2 shifts for about 3 weeks in a row, day and night, working about 20 hours a day, and calling my wife at 2 a.m. in the morning and saying, how is it that I build these projects successfully without complaint, with profitability for everyone that I work for, and work in this manner? Why can't I do this for myself? And the simple words were, you can.
Did she say that?
She said, you can. And I thought, why did you make that so simple? I want to fight, right? My entire life, like my gratitude today is for the fight. It's because of the suffering. I'm grateful for all of those past problems and issues that Grant created in his own life, right? Not God created, Grant created. It's the free will part. So the simple words were, you can.
So from you can, really that tipping point, really. So you're basically already there. Your wife kind of gave you the nudge, or thankful for those nudges that we get from people in our lives. I mean, I can think about what my journey looks like, and coming to the realization sometimes it was from the nudge, and I think back about that same phrase, you can, several mentors throughout my life. If I look back, that would probably be a consistent. You can, something along the lines also of, what are you waiting for? It not only is you can, but what are you waiting for? So, Grant, we just celebrated Veterans Day a few weeks ago, and I know that you served in the U.S. Navy, so thank you for your service. From that standpoint, in your leadership journey, when you look back on your military service, how did that help you today, you think, in your leadership journey, developing as a leader?
Strangely enough, I get that question pretty often. Do you think the military attributed to any of your success? First of all, I don't really measure what we do in success. I measure it in the success of our people. I'm kind of the last in line for that. But I would think maybe the biggest attribute, I think maybe the military contributed to the point where I am today, is that the military teaches you don't have to be in charge to be important, and you don't have to be in charge to take control or be in a leadership. So for me, there's many, many layers and levels of management and overseers in the military, and massive amounts of process. And I just realized that if I could do this process, I don't have to be in charge, but I can still be great at it. And so I think that's how the business has evolved, is that I've realized I don't have to be the best at it. I can depend on others to be better than me. I can draw off of that, but just don't stop the process. Just be the best at that process. Yeah,
and being in charge, not necessarily being in charge to be important. That's a great wisdom nugget for us already. And I'm thinking about our emerging leaders again. And of course, we started this podcast a year ago now. Then
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So we were interested in creating a platform for our leaders and our emerging leaders, and even those who haven't even thought about their leadership journey, to come and hear leaders like you. And we've brought leaders in from all over the country to hear their stories, to say, well, good night. Along the lines of, well, if Grant can do it, if Billy can do it, I'm listening to their story, well, certainly I can do it. So, as they're listening to this, maybe they aren't in charge, but what we want them to hear as part of our team is they are important. So I appreciate you saying that, because it is a value proposition. You have value to our organization no matter what level of participation you have. You are an important part of the team. So I love how the military opened that door for you, and then bringing that to us today. I can relate to that, and we've talked a lot about that on how we can be influencers right where we are. So Grant, we're coming up on the holidays, and we wanted to do this. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. Haley and I have been kicking this idea around from leading from a grateful heart. What does gratefulness have to do with leadership? And can we put these things together? Is gratefulness too soft for leadership? How does gratefulness and leadership connect?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty loaded question, and probably all the answers are first cousins, like Billy Duran would say. So I don't think one can recognize blessings or answered prayers or a given aspiration without a vision of gratitude. I think the gratitude has to be present before you can recognize blessings or prayers. So I think the gratitude comes first. We just don't recognize it until after the fact, for Grant anyway.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, there is this posture of gratefulness and really almost sort of staying in that posture for gratefulness. So I was talking this off the air before we got started today, and that spending some time with my grandchildren a little bit, I can feel a little bit of frustration building in my own heart about seeing some of their ungratefulness, but it's a reminder to me about how ungrateful I am so many times. So how we look at gratefulness as a leader, I thought about, how grateful for my team, grateful for the opportunities, grateful for the engagement, grateful for how we can be a part of something bigger than ourselves. That's just taking a posture of gratefulness. And I see that in you. I see that in your team, and I see that in how you care for your team. I watch some of your social media posts, and you guys do a lot of things away from work. And to me, that shows a posture of gratefulness. So how does your team receive that?
We have many personalities, so that's another loaded question. So we have some that draw the line between business and friendship or camaraderie, whatever the correct term for that is, sorry. And then we have others that continually cross the line, and then we have others that want to cross the line but aren't sure how to cross it. So each of us are unique. We all have skin and blood and bones, so that's the great thing. We have a lot in common, and I remind them of that. But I think each one approaches it differently. Some are grateful and don't have a posture of gratitude. Some are grateful and don't know how to express it. So I think as a leader, if you aspire for gratitude in a company or organization, I think that posture is probably highly important to reflect as a character to follow.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, because I think sometimes we need to create a platform for people to express. Because as you said, oftentimes some people don't know how to take a bow. Some people don't know how to receive gratefulness. Matter of fact, they'll kind of say, nah, you tell them something good about them, what you see in them, and they go, no, I'm almost as if they want to stay arm's length from that because they don't know how to receive that. So I think so here's another connection to gratefulness and leadership is allowing people to receive that gratefulness and then giving them the platform to express it. Because then it becomes a communication mechanism within the company. Listen, there's very rarely a rally for people who want to give thanks. The rallies are about the people who want to complain or something we protest or something we're against. We often fall into the natural posture of complaint. It's just easier. I'll tell you just a funny story real quick. So we were gathering for Thanksgiving, and my aunts had put together this piece of paper. Write down something you're thankful for when you come in the door. And it was like this. Oh, come on. I mean, if she'd have write down something you want to complain about, I'm not sure we wouldn't have jumped on all over that. But sometimes it's harder for us to find ourselves in that posture of thankfulness. Haley?
I think sometimes if you don't have a posture of gratefulness, you'll find that you sometimes have a chip on your shoulder. And I spoke with Billy about this a little bit yesterday, it took me a long time to remove a chip that I had on my shoulder. And sometimes I still find it there some days. I was telling him a story the other day about how when I was in college, I was driving home with my brother, and I needed a tank of gas. So we stopped at the gas station. I handed him my card because, you have a free laborer here to pump your gas for you. So I handed him my card, told him to fill up the tank. And he looked at me like I was insane, like I had just grown another head, and said, "Fill up the tank." What? And I was like, "You just put the card in and you put the, nozzle in, and then you just wait for it to be full." And he thought that the tank would start overflowing. But what I realized right then is, growing up, our parents never went and got a full tank of gas. It was a few dollars here, a few dollars there. It was a consistent battle of, when is the tank going to be empty? So for me, and growing up in that kind of environment, I didn't realize that having a full tank of gas is something to be grateful for, and to have the opportunity to be grateful for. So for those of us that are listening, how can we be mindful? And for you, Grant, how can we be mindful of all of the little things like a full tank of gas?
They're all loaded questions. So
that's what we do here at the podcast. We give you loaded questions.
So I always go down the dirt road. Billy says I go down the country ride instead of the freeway. So love is a choice. And many, many, many will hear that and say, there's no way. I choose to get up and love my wife, or I choose to get up and be aggravated with her. I choose to do things for her or my family out of love, or I choose not to. So actually love is a choice. God does equal love, but love does not equal God. He's much bigger. So in saying that, this is the loaded part that you're not going to be happy with, is when you sent me this about gratitude, I was like, oh man, I go to talk about being happy about something, right? It's a choice. And so as a owner, CEO, president, whatever you choose to title me, or any other leaders out there with the same type of authority, one thing that you should always be prepared never to hear is, great job, boss. Great job, sir. Man, you killed that. Thank you for all of this. This is not taking a stance of ungratefulness, but as a leader, you must be prepared for that. So luckily, God put this in the right place for me today to speak about gratitude and remind me it doesn't matter. I should be grateful for these people serving our company. I should be grateful that they continue to want to be employed there. I should be grateful with the things that I'm mindful of and think about that I give them in order to trade them off for their services, right? So the stance is an option. I can choose to be grateful or ungrateful, whether I hear "great job, boss" or not.
Right, and there are times, and Haley, that's a great question. There are times when we look at the people that are around us, the people that are part of the team that we're serving on, and we've got 2 or 3 in our group that we're all hitting on the same cylinders, and then we have that one, that kind of just continues to give that little rub. But someone gave me this phrase. It hasn't been that long ago, and it's called the beneficial adversary. The one that comes and helps kind of rub some of those rough spots out in our lives, and how we can be grateful for that. We kind of just turn it around. Instead of being aggravated with the frustration it might cause, that we might be grateful for, this person's helping me work out a difficult spot. So we can find ways to be grateful in those little things. That's a great question, Haley. So Grant, when we, part of the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, we don't want to just talk about what leadership looks like, in theory. We want to say, what does it actually look like? Does this leadership style of gratefulness seem common or uncommon? I mean, you're out on the job site. I mean, so I've been to some job sites. Some of the roughest action that goes on is in job sites and sometimes on plant floors. But does the gratefulness and that posture of gratefulness seem common in our industry?
I mean, I think that, kind of a side note, I think our success, if we can call it success, and there is a measure of that, our tradesmen, and, for them, you can preach all you want, but the real preaching comes from action and watching, right? I want to watch this guy. I don't want just the words. And so when I visit these sites, you would be absolutely amazed at how we have grown. And the enemy is such a thief of our time. It doesn't allow me to pour back into these people. And a simple pouring in to our people, when we're talking about leadership, is just being available. It's just showing up and saying, hey, man, that looks horrible. I need you to fix that. They would much rather me have some attention than zero attention. And so today I decided, because today was kind of a different leaf for us. It was a new leaf. Some things are changing and evolving at our company. And I decided to go to the projects. We've got a couple guys out of state. I went to all their projects, and you would be amazed at how they wanted to show me the work they were doing, how impressive it was, how quickly and efficiently they were doing, and the finished product. And so for me, I have a lot of gratitude for that, like astronomical amount of gratitude. I cannot even express the amount of gratefulness I have for people that are willing to serve something just for their paycheck. It's bigger than that for them. And so for me, it can't be words. It has to be through action. It has to show that I care. And so through that action, not the words, they're going to become grateful. They're going to appreciate and know they're appreciated. They're going to want to feed in and make their job bigger, right, and be more responsible. And so as a trade person, we're not formally educated. You know, these are the people like me who decided, you know, I'm out. Like I don't need an ACT. I'm not going to college. I'm not doing that. Listen, that's my platform. I was born for this. I'll die doing this, right? And so I always wondered, you know, what's my gift? Lord, what am I to do? What am I supposed to be doing? And he says, shh, you're doing it. Do what you're good at. Do what I blessed you with. And so it's a new leaf of gratitude today for me, because when I go to that job, the eyes get big, and they're like, even the Latinos are like, hey, it's El Padrino, you know? And so it's pretty funny, but they appreciate that. And when I'm not there, morale is down, gratitude is down, production is down, quality is down. All of that stuff stems from your very word today, gratitude.
What's the word you just said in Spanish? Come on, I mean, I have
El Padrino, that's the big boss.
Okay, so
yeah.
They're pointing at you, and that's,
yes.
Here comes the big boss.
Chiquito Jefe is the small boss. So.
Okay, so what is short boss? So that would be
small. Okay. Chiquito.
Okay, so we were just in we had an event a couple weeks ago, and I got to see our team with a microphone in their hand talking to a new group of team members. And as I was sitting there, when I came home, I actually told Tracy how wonderful it was to watch our team express their not only gratitude for being on the team, but their appreciation and gratitude for those who are joining our team. And it was very fulfilling as a leader to sit there and watch the team just take on the responsibility of saying, here's who we are, here's what we do, but here's why we do it. But more importantly, this is who we are. Such a grateful experience for me to sit there and watch that team. So we're going to take a little break, and when we're going to come back, we're going to talk to Grant about engagement and culture at BCM. This is the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, and we'll be right back.
Threaded Fasteners is a 100% employee-owned company whose mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. So, if you're interested in learning more about how we develop a people-centric culture, or if you're interested in a customized fastener solution, send us an email at culture@threadedfasteners.com. That's culture@threadedfasteners.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the meeting room, and we're here today with Grant Morring. He's the president, CEO of BCM Morring. Grant, we've been talking about gratefulness. We've been talking about employee engagement and what that looks like. And so now we're going to kind of pivot over to culture and engagement and what that looks like at BCM, because we have a lot of owners. I think we have a lot of business owners. We have a lot of leaders that want to be more engaging with their team. What does leadership engagement look like at BCM Morring?
So it was a phenomenal failure in the beginning years, and it was kind of like loading bags of coffee on a mule. And when their back started bending, that's when I knew to take weight off. And so my only gauge was to continue to stack bags on top until they broke. And that's a horrible way to lead. It's a horrible way to retain. It's a horrible way to feel or see any gratitude.
So are you saying that you're putting too much on the leaders? I mean, I want to get the picture here, make sure I understand what you're saying here.
Yeah, so that was kind of our gauge at the beginning, is let's weigh and measure these employees, and that was kind of a Grantism, a way to weigh and measure what they could actually accomplish.
So was that more based on what you had experienced? So this is kind of how you learned, so you turned around and did it? We oftentimes we replicate what we see. We grew up this way, and this is kind of, we were parented this way. This is how we parent. We watched a marriage. This is how we're married. Some of that same kind of stuff. Is that the result of that?
I'm sure it's lifestyle, and I'm sure it's experience, and even talk about the military. It's a different military now, but when they tell you to drop and give them 100, you don't really get an option. And when you go down at 89 and they kick you in the back of the head and say, get back up, your back's breaking, right? So there's really no options. You can't get up and quit.
Yeah,
and do a timeout.
And I do think, and we've had a lot of leaders on over our 2 seasons now, and I really believe, even when we had Jenny Vanderslice was on our podcast several months ago, and Jenny is a leadership coach, and she actually talked about how this demanding, yelling, barking type of leader, I know they still exist. I mean, there's no question about that. And at times, even the best leaders can fall back into that posture if they're not careful. But I do think it's fading. And I think it's fading because the employee is demanding something else. They want more. You mentioned earlier they want to be heard. They want their work to be appreciated. I think that when part of our interview process now is, how can we keep you here for 20 years? What's it gonna require of us? And so we've actually made a challenge to ourselves. This is our part. Here's what we ask of you, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to point you to success. We're going to communicate what we're doing. So there is a changing of leadership, and how we engage with our teams are so much more important these days. And I know that you said that was in the beginning. How have you pivoted towards something else?
Yeah, I think as Threaded Fastener and all other companies, grow, there's a lot of great books for it, but it's like raising children, right? So it evolves each day as you wake. And, for us, we kind of have created, are creating, and continue to create some responsibility matrix, and the responsibility matrix, we kind of build it based on each profile of employees we have with strengths and weaknesses, and kind of the old verbiage of the duck, the chicken, and the eagle. The duck is graceful across the water, hardly has a ripple. The chicken, if you try to chase one on land, they're impossible to catch. And the eagle is a mile gracefully with a 6 to 8 foot wingspan without any effort, right? But you try to put an eagle on the ground and see if he can run, he can barely even walk. You put a chicken in water, it's over, right? And the duck is a little bit different too. So now, our vision is to make sure we don't put a duck in an eagle's role or a chicken in the same opposite role as well. It doesn't mean that they're failures as employees. It doesn't mean that they can't accomplish specific goals. So our leadership style now is to make sure to not put a duck in an eagle's responsibility.
I've never heard it said that way, but it's a great picture for me. I mean, I'm a visual learner. I would tell you that the similar example would have been make sure that you have the right person on the right bus, but then the right seat on that bus. So similarly, that's a great way. And how we engage and explain to our eagles and our ducks and our chickens the role that they are. But in full disclosure here, part of the challenge is to explain to each of our team, if they want to advance, here's your path. Here's how you can do this, and put some things out there for them. And we have some leadership development tools that we use at Threaded Fasteners and are very, very proud of those. One of the things that we love to pull some quotes out of some of the leaders of the day. Simon Sinek quoted as saying, the value of a true leader is not measured by the work they do, but by the work they inspire others to do. I know your story. You and I have known each other for quite some time, and where you came from and how you got started. How can sharing one story, Grant, help your team members? So does everyone know your story? And if they don't, and if they do, how did you tell that to them? And what does that mean as you're telling it to them?
For me, it's a time to inspire when things get tough or, Haley, they're not as grateful, right? So, we have an employee with a problem going through some life challenges, and, it's great to relate because we're humans and we require that. It's not all work. And so I think to tell them some of their own boss's failures or some of their experiences, God created our testimony. Our testimony is our story for those who are not believers, but our story has a particular audience, and He created it for each of us to find that audience. There are people or a person somewhere in this world that needs to hear your story, and so I think the inspiration and the ability for them to get over pitfalls, shortcomings, a lull in their career, whatever's happened in their family life, we have to be realistic and think they're not going to show up like A-plus providers every day. They're going through the same, like to say we're either in the beginning, the middle, or the end of our storm. Which part of the storm are you in, right?
Right, and we've all been in different places so that we can communicate with different people at different places in their lives. And we've all had a similar experience like this. But I think the takeaway is tell our story. We have a story, tell our story. But and really, depending on who it is, people are listening, but they're also watching. I want to see your story, not just hear your story. So, Haley?
I've also kind of seen it as if I'm a mentor and I've walked this path and this path did not do well for me, it's my responsibility as a leader to say, hey, that path, it's got some roadblocks in it. And maybe you want to still go on that path, but I'm just going to let you know that I've walked it and I will be here with you and for you as you walk along this path. But there's some roadblocks ahead and I want to help you through those. For me, and again, we're all going to have these roadblocks. We're all going to have different things that we have. The other day, I was having a meeting with someone, and he was telling me about an event that his team had put together. And I could tell when we were talking that he was not happy with how it went. And so I've learned this from Billy that, leaning in a little bit on that and saying, well, what happened? How did that go for you? It kind of came out that he was disappointed with the outcome of the event. And what I told him and things that I had learned in my experience is that most of the time you're going to have a little bit of a harsher outlook on an event or the outcome of a project than anyone else around you is going to have. It's like when you go to the theater and the actors mess up, the actor is the one that knows that he messes up, and not the people in the audience. So how can we as leaders and on this journey of thankfulness be thankful for a failure? I don't like the term failure, but thankful for the learning opportunities that we have in saying, okay, I've done this. I wasn't 100% happy with it. How can I move forward?
Yeah, I don't know the textbook answer to that. I can tell you that I've noticed over the last year, which I'm highly grateful for, is our people own it. They own it. And so, I'm not the most approachable person being a general contractor, and like Billy said, the job sites are messy. And like if you have to let someone go on a job site, you do it from arm's distance just in case. But the owning it, I found out the accountability and the humbleness that comes from myself or one of our people owning a problem or a mistake, no matter minor or major, is there is so much growth for the entire company when others hear of the ownership and they don't discourage, they don't mock, they don't talk about it amongst others. It's just an ownership, and it goes away instantaneously. And so I'm very passionate and actually, quote unquote, fall in love with our employees over their ownership because I own it just like they do. And there's a possibility they've learned that from me, that it's okay to be imperfect. So
yeah, and I think that I think you make a great point there. They want to see, are you going to own it? first. Because we've actually just had this exercise with some of our safety issues. Our safety directors encouraging our team to report near misses. Near misses at times. Well, wait a minute, I'm not going to report those. I mean, I'm pointing out to the team that I potentially created a safety hazard. But the only way that we're going to get better and create transparency and real transparency is that if we own those near misses, we own those reports, we own that reporting. You know what? I just miscut this. I mean, this is just, I made the mistake. I either ordered it wrong, ordered too much, ordered too little. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I mean, little bitty opportunities that happen over the course of a day, week, month in our journey. And being vulnerable, I think that's kind of the word, being vulnerable to say, I'm not perfect. You don't have to be perfect to be successful here. We want to strive for excellence, not perfection. So Grant, and this is one of the questions that we ask everybody that comes on the podcast, and I love this portion of it because here's CEOs sitting in the meeting room with us, and we've got young leaders out there going, you know what? I'm listening to Grant's story. I've been listening to these leaders come on the podcast, all these episodes, and kind of hearing their journey. If we had an emerging leader sitting there, or even someone, Grant, at Thread of Fasters, or people listening to the podcast, and they say, hey, you know what? I think I've got what it takes. I want to get started on my leadership journey. What would your advice be to them?
I mean, I've got a lot of really silly cliches, So, my father died at a young age, joined the military, had lots of issues growing up. Same thing with Haley. We were wondering when we were going to run out of gas going to school, right? So, lots of complications. I'm grateful for all of the disparaging things in my life because they brought me to this point. Encouragement for people that are aspiring, think they're aspiring, or are on the verge of becoming their own employer. My father said, listen, I don't care what you do. I need you to be happy and be the best at whatever it is. So, I actually wanted to be a tire changer. And then I decided I wanted to be a farmer. Man, thank you, God. I'm grateful for a few of those things I decided not to aspire to be. I tell you to be the best janitor you could be. It does not matter, because I tell my son that if you start sweeping floors on the job site, be the best floor sweeper, because at some point you could be the head of the janitorial union for the state of Alabama, sweeping out Governor Kay Ivey's private quarters, right? They make pretty good money. So listen, be the best floor sweeper. And Billy, when you first visited us back in 07 or 08, I said that I'd known of Threaded Fastener, and you said, no. You never worked down there. Well, we figured out that we did. We're on the road to Amaze together. We just didn't recognize each other. So in saying that, always look around at the people who have inspired you in your life, the people who have believed in you, and even the naysayers are just as important. Take note on every single one of them, because they're saying important things that you can either work against or things that will work for you.
And I think that's a great way to end our segment with Grant. But because when we look at what our journey looks like, I love that you can turn around and encourage those who are at that place that are deciding on, do I want to be a leader? Do I want to put my hand up and say, hey, what about me? Just be the best that you are where you are, and you're not going to be unnoticed. And as leaders, that's a commitment we have to make to our teams. We need to recognize those young talents, that raw talent, and then help sort of guide it along its journey. So, Grant, I am so thankful for you being on the podcast today. I was really looking forward to this. I know your heart of gratefulness, and I thought you were the perfect choice to be with us today. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Haley and I will be right back with some closing comments. All right, everybody, thank you for being with us today on the episode with Grant Morring. I had some really good takeaways. Grant's moved from being a great craftsman now into creating a great organization, does a lot of high-end work. And, I mean, he actually has done some great work for our company. As a matter of fact, he just took over the last building and completed that at our Morris Hill Road facility and just did a fantastic job. Haley, one of my takeaways was you can be in charge. You don't have to be in charge to be important. I really love that that piece of it, because we want to express to our team how important they are, even though if they are not in a in-charge kind of leadership position. How about you?
Yeah, when he said having a vision of gratitude, we talk about having a vision all the time, but we don't necessarily talk about having a vision of something, a vision of gratitude, a vision of leadership, a vision of, thankfulness, all of these different things. You have to think about those in almost a strategic mindset of how can I be thankful for everything. And then also, I can't help but mention the duck, the chicken, and the eagle. That was good. That was great.
That was good. So Haley, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I know you're not preparing an apple pie or the turkey or anything.
I may have some things up my sleeve.
We probably know each other well enough to know that they're not expecting you to bring the turkey or anything. What is the Thanksgiving tradition? What's maybe a food you're looking forward to? Or what's something about Thanksgiving that you love? It's my favorite holiday, by the way.
I always ask for mashed potatoes. It's my favorite food. And even though my grandpa does not believe in mashed potatoes as a Thanksgiving food, he will always make sure that he has mashed potatoes ready for me. So
always has Thanksgiving mashed potatoes for Haley.
And my after Thanksgiving nap. That is a tradition.
Always a tradition. I've heard about the turkey does something about make you sleepy. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Maybe that's an old tale, but I will say this. I'm thankful for you, Haley. I'm thankful for what you do for the podcast, for what you do in our company. Our team needs to hear that our grateful hearts for the contributions that they make. And, Grant said it today. Sometimes we aspire to say things, but I don't need you to read my mind. I need to be able to express. So from the biggest parts of the takeaways for me today, not only from Grant, from hearing you and the things that we threw in there, is taking a posture of thankfulness or gratefulness. It's important. It's important to the people around you, because what we do, how we act around people, and, we draw people toward us, I believe, when we have a grateful heart. So, Haley, we're looking forward to the next episode already. So until then, tighten up.
Tighten up. Thank you. Thank you for joining the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, brought to you by the employee owners of Threaded Fasteners. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to, rate, and review the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a leadership story to tell or a question to ask? Email us at podcast@threadedfasteners.com. That's podcast@threadedfasteners.com. This show is made possible by our family at Threaded Fasteners, Inc. Our mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. Interested in learning more about TFI and how we create value in our team, in our communities, and in our customers? Visit threadedfasteners.com. Thank you again for listening. I'm your co-host and producer, Haley Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duran.
This show is edited and produced by Johnny Glenn and our friends at Deep Fried Studios.